My name is Stefan Moritz, Managing Director of European Entrepreneurs, CEA-PME, a European Confederation of SME associations from all European member states, representing 2.1 million companies, voluntarily organized, not obligatory membership, and representing also more than 15 million of employees. Our confederation is, of course, very shocked by the current situation, by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we hope definitely that the parties will find soon a solution on the in the peace talks they are leading in Istanbul, and that soon we will come back, I will not say to normal, but let's say without shooting. But in the same moment, although we needed to get this situation, we will need the sanctions. It is also important that we think about what it means to for SMEs to to live with these sanctions. The impacts are quite strong. Supply chains are nearly broken down. The costs for energy are rising, especially raw materials, which are crucial for the industry in Europe and beyond, are getting really difficult to be sourced, and many activities, let's say, from managing the sanctions in the right way to sourcing differently from new sources and finding new alternative markets are all important. But what we want to look at as a European Confederation of SME is the impact of the sanctions and how to manage them. May I ask you please to switch microphones, Mr. Balagizi and Mr. Lebeau. Thank you very much. And we would I would like to shortly introduce you to what our Confederation's board, executive board, has decided to ask to the European institutions to undertake in order that we can alleviate the sanctions as much as possible, and it's the impact of the sanctions, of course, which regards different sectors. So we have published on our website also this resolution on the war in Ukraine and the impact on the European SMEs of the EU sanctions against Russia, to which we have to count also the counter sanctions. European Entrepreneurs CEA-PME asked the European Union to take care for an adequate compensation in support of all those SMEs that will suffer from the cost of the sanctions, maybe through a new kind of plan like we had during the Corona crisis, European energy raw materials supply chain crisis plan, because this is now the biggest concern, we can say, and to which aspects like alternative supply sources for raw materials must be taken into account. For example, revoke or suspend import limits and customs on steel and aluminium imports, which are currently in place still, or to bring forward fastly the free trade agreements between the EU and some other countries in the world. The next to be signed most probably is the one with New Zealand, but we are negotiating since a long time also on EU-Mercosur, and we hope that this will be solved soon. Finally, also the legislation processes which are underway, for example, on the due diligence in international supply chains, shall be paused and reflected and adapted to the current situation and the current sanctions and their impact. Of course, we also call for a control of the energy prices, because there has been speculation, but also not adequate, well-working markets to, let's say, balance the impact of the speculations and the impact on the energy markets, but also the whole legislation package around Fit for 55, not cancelling it, and of course maintaining the final objective of net zero CO2 in Europe in 2050. We have to think now how far this will be possible to be reached, let's say, with a 55% of reduction of CO2 compared to 1990. If that is feasible, or it will take other ways and a little bit of flexibility in the implementation of that. Of course, also energy production in Europe must become more autonomous, let's say, or at least diverse, and we must source our energy sources from other possibilities, other places, and need for that also energy partnerships with other neighboring countries. But also we should simplify our regulations and procedures that now help to, for example, expand wind energy, which still in Germany needs 5 years, in France in average 7 years to set up one wind power plant due to the very lengthy impact assessment studies that have to be undertaken, and also due to other questions regarding the nature conservation, of course. Not that we don't want nature conservation, but it's important that we now think what is crucial, and how strong maybe a wind plant can impact, and how strong maybe a coal or oil energy plant can impact. And in a way, either way, also we need to consider natural gas and nuclear energy at least for some years still as a transitory or compatible technologies towards CO2. That means also to relax here or simplify the rules on taxonomy. That means the financial opportunity to invest into these technologies. That has been approved by our executive board and by the European Small Business Alliance president, Mr. David Carroll, which is one of our partners. Maybe to come back to the question regarding the sanctions, I would try to give an overview about the current situation of sanctions in place. Wait, I have here, yeah, that is, I have to open that. Yeah. So we are talking here about, let's say, the sanctions that have been taken against Russia since 2014, since the invasion of the Crimea. And the basis for this is the European Council decision of 2022, which of 2014, which has been continuously updated. The content of this decision are measures that the Council took to put pressure on Russia in order to stop its actions and to support Ukraine, as well as also the goal to target Russians' economically most important areas, which need to have access to the EU market in order that, let's say, the impact of the sanctions are as strong as possible. These measures for the moment will apply only until 31st of July, and the impact in several fields which might have negative effects, especially on SMEs, of course. Then to see which areas are regard the sanctions that are mainly, let's say, financial measures. So, for example, the exportation of euro from the European Union to Russia, that is prohibited. Then the prohibiting also the credit rating services and access to subscription services. Also prohibition of the investment in and merger with Russian legal persons operating in the energy sector. Or also then the prohibition of transactions with state-owned enterprises, of course also of exportations and importations of arms, weapons. Prohibition of dual-use goods and technologies. We will come later back to this concept. And advanced technology exportations, as well as also prohibition of goods and technology used in aviation and or the space industry connected to that, as well as also the limits to maritime navigation goods and technology exportations, I listed here already iron, steel and wood, coal and cement importations, of which, let's say, wood, coal and cement are the most recent ones, maybe not yet 100% agreed, but they are talking about it. Then there is the prohibition of exportations and services regarding the oil refining industry, the prohibition of luxury goods exportation. You can find the list of all these products, and in the annexes of the 2014 Council decision amended, we will share this file later with all the people that have participated. Then the information about which products are affected can also be found in on the European Commission's website under the so-called TARIC consultation website. That is the customs website where you can identify the goods by codes, but also by keywords using the browsing tool, which is available on that platform. Then, of course, where you can also get more detailed information are the so-called documents on frequently asked questions, which are currently and continuously updated. There's one side that regards the general questions regarding sanctions adopted following Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, or also all the FAQ regarding the dual use of goods on export relations restricted. How can I know that a product that I want to import is considered as coming from Russia? That is regard here the rule of non-preferential origin or rule of origin. When a product was solely manufactured in Russia, it cannot be imported. That is clear. But then you have many products which are mixed, which have pieces from one country and pieces from another country. One part of the work has been done here and the other part has been done there, or even in third and fifth and fourth and fifth countries. So when a product was manufactured in more than one country, the country where the last substantial transformation, that is important, substantial transformation, so not only fixing some screws or packaging, but substantial transformation of the product occurs, is considered to be the originating country. In that case, if it was Russia, it cannot be imported to the EU. And then further, if you want to have more information, you will find here a link in the PowerPoint presentation that we will share with those who have joined this meeting today. Next point is how can I maybe benefit from an exception to the application of the prohibitions in two situations. Some products won't be subject to prohibitions. One, when the contract was signed before a certain date. And under specific conditions, the products can benefit from an authorization to be imported or exported delivered by competent authority of each single member state. That is very important. This is not the European Commission here that can give authorization, but it is the member state that can give that. Specific dates and derogations can be found in the consolidated version of the Council decision that we have already mentioned at the beginning, which is also published always when it is updated again. Finally, what is the procedure to benefit from an authorization? You have to go online and find the template provided in Annex 9 of the Sanctions regulation. That is, the link will be here, you will find here, and the competent authorities in the member state will assess the request, specify the necessary documentation. The list of the competent authorities can also be found in the Sanctions Regulation Council decision under Annex 2. Yeah, that was, let's say, an overview. I would say we wait for the questions until later, because I'm already 4 minutes late, but we started 5 minutes late too. So I would invite now my colleague, Mrs. Eva Revilla of the European Commission, Directorate General GROW, that is responsible for industry, entrepreneurship, single market, and SMEs, or also the other way around, SMEs and single market and so on. And she's in the unit for SME policies. Thank you very much, Mrs. Revilla. I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting today. I have to say, well done. The presentation that we just saw is very detailed and really good. So well done to you and your team. Excellent. A small correction, I do not come from the SME unit. I come from the unit that is dealing with the industrial forum, alliances and clusters. And our unit is part of the supply chains disruptions task force of the European Commission. And this is the reason why my colleagues from the SME unit contacted me to be here with you today. I think that after your overview, then it's my turn really to tell you what we have put in place in order to tackle all these problems. I mean, from the very beginning, when all this started, and in fact, we started already with the COVID pandemic and now with the war. For us, what it is clear is that we need to keep our internal market, which is really the biggest stressor that we have right now in order to face all these situations. We need to keep it working as smooth as possible, and it has to be up and running very, very well. And we need a very strong European response. It has to be rapid, it has to be effective, and with systemic solutions that will address all the common concerns. We cannot achieve that at national level. It has to be done at the European level. That's why the internal market here is so important. And we need to build up this resilience via not only the solidarity, which is extremely important these days, but also with the pooling of all the experiences, the resources, and the capacities. That's why I keep emphasizing that the single market is part of the answer. While Russia is significantly more dependent on the EU than vice versa, the ongoing invasion creates a lot of risk of disruptions, as you have very well mentioned, for the EU in a lot of critical areas. And we are very well aware that several EU member states rely strongly on imports from Russia for a number of raw and processed materials. This yet again clearly shows the need to increase our resilience and on all different fronts, and a better understanding of the EU strategic dependencies and taking the right measures to address them is a cornerstone of what we are doing in our industrial strategy. As I said, we already started with COVID-19, and of course we will continue and adapt it as necessary now. And based on all this experience in DG Grow, we have a lot of expertise on data availability, and we are monitoring what is going on through the supply chains task force. And I belong to this group. And this comes along different dimensions: the aggregate trade and FDI exposure, the sectoral exposure and dependencies in terms of value added, product exposure, product categories, such as exports and imports, dependent products, selected raw materials, real-time customs data as a monitoring tool, and firm level revenue exposure. Right now, we are currently running a survey on supply chain disruptions. I'll send you the link. I think I already did, Stefan, if I'm not mistaken, and it is still open. And we very much welcome all your contributions to this survey, because we have a lot of, as you may imagine, a lot of different sources. This meeting, for example, is another source for us to understand what is going on, what are your concerns, and I will very much welcome your presentation and position paper. But we keep getting all these opinions, and in fact, which is feedback from the ground that is helping us to prepare our response in the most adequate way. Regarding the strategic dependencies, we are obviously checking how this evolves in the future. We are also getting some echoes from the industry that the industry is ready to adapt. But it may take time and it may take some resources, but ready to adapt. And we have taken several steps in this direction. We see that this is really across all the different industrial ecosystems. And what we are doing on the several fronts is, for example, permitting, as it was mentioned. We are addressing all the concrete barriers in the deployment of renewable energy technologies in the EU. Really, our work right now is to be sure that we go into renewable energy at full scale. Solutions are there, And in fact, we already have signals from the industry that they are ready. But we need to be sure that there are no bureaucratic obstacles to these solutions, and also that we have the alternative suppliers that are needed for certain materials that are used in renewable energy. And really our job is really to facilitate this as much as possible. Because in any case, the trend from 2020, we see that renewable energy has overtaken fossil fuel energy, and the trend will continue, and we are there to facilitate that. On standardization, we have been working on, for example, for energy resilience, the solar PVs, heat pumps, hydrogen, or future defense capabilities. And here the standards obviously will play a role. And this requires new ways of working and accelerated procedures to develop technical specifications outside the usual standardization route. And of course, we are in deep discussions with different standardizations bodies on all fronts. Then for all the refugees, they are benefiting from temporary protection, but we want them to go into the labor market. And so there is a lot of work going on. You might have heard about the Pact for the Skills, connecting with the regional authorities, education organizations, businesses and volunteer organizations to support the Ukrainian refugees, to quickly offer them language and digital and language skills, but also the recognitions of qualifications so they can access the labor market as soon as possible. There are many things going on. I could spend 1 hour going through them, and maybe there are colleagues that are even better placed than me to give you all the details. But on the professional qualifications, we are promoting a consistent approach across all member states for the professional recognition, with our recommendation on the recognition of professional qualifications for people that are fleeing the war in Ukraine. On raw materials and energy, I already mentioned it, but I mean, it's no secret, palladium and titanium, these are critical raw materials from Russia and Ukraine. The prices have increased as a result of the war. And we also import base metals that have important industrial applications, such as aluminium or nickel. So in the Versailles Declaration of the European Council committed to securing the EU supply of critical raw materials by the means of strategic partnerships, while exploring also our strategic stockpiling and promoting the circular economy and resource efficiency. And we recently adopted the circular economy package, which very much goes into this direction. It's really now time to start putting recycling and the circular economy even more upfront than we were doing before. Is really the way to go. And then wherever it is in the European Union right now, shouldn't leave it. We should reuse it. And for that, there are also solutions, but they are not at the scale they should be. We continue monitoring the supply chain situation, always in contact with you, with companies, with business representatives, but also with the member states, obviously. And part of my job, in fact, is industrial mobilization. That means that we are really providing the framework and helping the industry to find alternative suppliers. And in fact, maybe if you are not attending, maybe you would be interested to know that on the 26th and 27th of April, we are using now our our projects through European business networks. One of them is the Enterprise Europe Network, and the other one is the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. This would be our open channels in order to inform you and also to get feedback from you on what is going on. So through the Cluster Collaboration Platform and EEN, we have a meeting in Lithuania, which is really to really explore the capacities of the Baltic region to reinforce the supply chains between the Baltic region and the rest of the European Union, because obviously they are very exposed to this situation with Russia and the war in Ukraine. And also to really find alternatives and find suppliers. So if some suppliers, Russian suppliers, are being lost on the one hand, they are European suppliers that are ready to come in. And this seminar will also be followed by a matchmaking event. So I very much encourage you to come and to register for the seminar and really to participate in the matchmaking event. Is just one of many coming as soon as we detect specific disruptions in the supply chains. These are tools that we are going to put in place for as long as needed, because this is also our experience with the COVID-19. We are the pharmacy of the world, and this is because also the European industry came in very strongly, and we were able to increase production, find alternative suppliers, facilitate the consolidation of companies, and all the lessons learned from COVID-19 are perfectly viable now in a war situation. A word now about hydrogen. So you are deploying hydrogen at market scale is key for our competitiveness, and mainly the competitiveness of the energy intensive industries in a decarbonized economy. With a lot of funds, 800 million euros per year, and clearing the state aid for hydrogen projects is really a priority, and we are working in through the Hydrogen Alliance, which also counts with a lot of SMEs that are coming with excellent proposals in this field. Also, we have important projects of common interest in health and pharma. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic is not quite over yet, and this is a front that we need to check, and also be sure that there is a lot of demand also on the pharma front with the situation of the refugees, and it's not just COVID-19, it's really about other type of medicines. Some last points from me, and if I go in over the time, please, Stefan, just let me know.
Maybe 1 minute, and then we give time for a question if there is, because you need to go.
Okay, thank you. That we are now applying a lot of flexibility under the state aid rules. We did that already for COVID-19. Then we figured out that in some places they didn't know that we could apply this flexibility, but now I think it's clear. So these sanctions adopted by the EU in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it take a toll on the European economy, as you were very well explaining, and it will continue to do so in the coming months. So to mitigate the impact, the Commission has enabled the member states to use the flexibility that is foreseen under the state aid rules to tackle this unprecedented situation, which should answer also some of the questions that you were having about support for SMEs that are being affected. So the flexibility is there. And this new framework will enable the member states to grant limited amounts of aid to companies affected by the current crisis or by the related sanctions and counter sanctions. Ensure that sufficient liquidity remains available to businesses and compensate companies for the additional costs that are incurred due to an exceptionally high gas and electricity prices. So now you know, you can engage with your national authorities, the flexibility is already there. So this is really a way to support companies that are suffering from this situation. On antitrust, the European Competition Network will not actively intervene against strictly necessary and temporary measures specifically targeted at avoiding the severe disruptions caused by the impact of the war. If companies have doubts about this, of this compatibility of such cooperation initiatives with the EU competition law, they can reach out to the Commission. And as I said, we have open channels with you through, for example, on the 13th of April, we have what we call the EU cluster talks through the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and you can participate perfectly well, where we are going to go very deep into Repower EU. So what are the measures regarding energy, gas, oil, renewable energies that we have put in place in the Commission with the participation of companies, and we will be looking at these solutions that we want to scale up at the European level. I very much welcome you to these type of sessions, because this is an open channel, and by all means it's an open channel also for you to let us know what is going on in the field. Sorry if I went for too long, but as this is the opportunity, as I will have to join another meeting in a few minutes, I wanted at least to pass on the messages that I hope were interesting for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Revilla. As she said, she has to go away. I would invite the audience to switch on your microphone and ask a question, maybe first raising your hand, but Professor Mundry is already there. Do you have a question, or it's only because you continue then?
No, I have no question. I'm just preparing myself.
Somebody has a question, then please raise your hand and we can give you the microphone. To Mrs. Revilla for what she exposed, or to me, what I have presented before regarding the...
That means everything was very clear.
Seems so. Yes.
Otherwise, if there are no questions, maybe I will very much would like to listen to the next speaker, at least for a few minutes, because I think that the presentation will be very, very interesting. Yeah. So it's up to you, Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Revilla. Here's also our guest, Dr. Thomasmundry, a partner of Schneider Group, Moscow. And he's presenting us it's a German but a global company, let's say. He's presenting us the complexity and impact also on SMEs for what regards the counter sanctions from Russia, which are also many and diversified. And that is, of course, also a critical aspect, because you don't have to only comply with the European rules, but if you have a business there and maybe a branch and a partnership and a contract, you have to also comply with their rules. So Professor Mundry, would you please explain us a little bit better?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moritz, for the introduction. Thank you very much, Ms. Revilla, for the view on the EU sanctions. Our company is working for 15 years in Russia, in Moscow, and we are very much assisting Western businesses regarding their Russian related activities. And what I want to give you now is the view from Russia to the situation, not including the actions in Ukraine, but what happens with regard to business in Russia. Russia's response to the Western sanctions, I would say the EU and US sanctions are very much directed to, or their aim is to hit the Russian economy, to hit the oil and gas industry, to hit, of course, the military industry of the Russian Federation, and to hit the financial system of Russia. And in particular, this is true for the fact that Western sanctions separated the central bank of Russia from its foreign currency reserves, and that's led at the beginning of the Ukraine crisis to a heavy drop of the ruble. And what currently main subject of the counter sanctions of Russia is to somehow weigh out these consequences, and this has the central bank of Russia done rather successfully, and now the ruble, after having against the euro, the exchange rate was at a certain time about 130, 135, and now it's again back down to 95. What is the subject of the sanctions? In principle, Russia has inserted a mandatory sale of all foreign currency gains from trade transactions. 80% of these gains must be converted into rubles. There's also that relates not only to financial actions, but to Russia wants to protect. Russia wants to keep the real estate within Russia. So sanctioned are currently any real estate transactions which involve foreigners from so-called unfriendly countries and Russian residents. Such transactions may mostly be done only with the consent of a governmental commission, and to the extent that they are allowed, the gains from such transactions must be credited to a special account, and this special account may only be used for certain purposes. What is normally allowed is that Russian residents are granting foreign currency loans to Russian non-residents, and of course the idea behind is that Russia wants to prevent any capital flight from Russia, any flight of euro to abroad. That's one of the main aims. Russia wants to keep the euros in the country. And therefore these transactions are prohibited. What is still permitted, it's I think very important for businesses. European businesses are still permitted in principle to sell their goods to Russian residents and to be paid in euros. That's a very important exception. Yeah, so that is something which is, despite the difficult circumstances for Russia, this is still allowed and still permitted, and a basis for European businesses to further act with Russian customers. Other restrictions are payments of dividends to shares. This is prohibited. So Russian residents are no further allowed to pay dividends to their shareholders. This applies also to the distribution of profits of other types of Russian legal entities. So in principle, what I think what should be kept in mind always is what is from the Russian point of view maybe not permitted is always any payments of residents in foreign currency to non-residents, because this would lead to a situation that these euro are paid abroad, and Russia wants to keep the euros within the country, wants to aim behind this is to stabilize the ruble. So I think then I already mentioned the exceptions. What I also would like to say is that you can see also from the sanctions that Russia has an interest to keep the foreign businesses within Russia. So nothing what Russia does is directed at driving non-Russian businesses out of the countries, or nothing what Russia does is directed against foreigners currently living in Russia. There was an instruction which said that visas for certain types of non-Russian citizens are no further issued or are no further extended, but these restrictions concerned I would say special groups of persons, in particular journalists, but most other non-Russian citizens are not subject of any restrictions. The other way around, Russia is granting permanent residence permits to high qualified foreign specialists upon their application. So Russia has a valid interest to keep foreign business in Russia and also foreign businessmen. So with regard to the time, I would like to jump over to the further details of the counter sanctions. Important aspects are provision of exports from Russia. This concerns usually products which Russia very much needs, in particular pharmaceuticals, telecommunication equipment, certain types of packaging, agricultural equipment, railway wagons and engines. And Russia has prohibited to export these goods from Russia. But the idea behind it is not to destroy any business. The idea behind it is just to keep these goods within Russia. A very what I would also like to explain is what effects the EU and US sanctions have to businesses, European businesses dealing with Russian customers. And this is now, I think, something which maybe look a little bit surprising from the European perspective. From the European perspective, it is clear there are sanctions, and businesses have to behave in accordance with these sanctions. But European businesses who are active in Russia are not free from any obligations. They are usually parties to agreements with Russian customers. And if a sanction now says you are prohibited further to deliver that good to the Russian customer, that means that that the European businesses is in a sandwich situation, because on the one hand, it has to obey European sanctions that concerns the EU manager, or if there are any European shareholders, or maybe a European director, they have to obey sanctions, and they have to achieve that the EU business is no further supplying this good to the customer. But on the other hand, the business has an obligation under an agreement with a Russian customer, and this agreement must be performed under Russian laws, or maybe under US laws, under German, Spanish, whatever law, and that leads to a very difficult situation. And even more difficult is what we have heard at the beginning of the crisis, that many businesses said, we are closing our business in Russia. That was heard in particular from McDonald's, from other big companies, and just saying we are closing business due to the actions of Russia is not something which gives a justification to not to perform agreements with Russian customers. And this situation is not very easy. Under Russian law in principle knows the situation that party to an agreement may change the agreement or may terminate the agreement due to the so-called change of circumstances, meaning if there are circumstances which the parties could not foresee when they entered into the agreement, and if these are circumstances which are difficult to overcome for one of the parties, and which would cost high money, then a party has in principle the right to amend the agreement or to terminate the agreement. And in this regard, it is rather clear that what happens in Ukraine and what happens with regard to sanctions and so on is not something which is acknowledged under Russian law as a change of circumstances. And I want to say it would also not be acknowledged under the jurisdiction of other countries. So sanctions, dropping of ruble, financial crisis, inflation, these are all no circumstances which justify to amend a contract or to terminate an agreement. The same is true for embargoes, increase of prices, or payment problems even. There's one exception. This is the so-called impossibility to perform an agreement. And this may in particular happen if a sanction prohibits the import or the export of certain good to Russia. If there's an export ban, which could not have been foreseen at the beginning of the contract, this may be a reason for a termination of an agreement under Russian law. But all the other aspects which I mentioned are usually no reasons for a change of circumstances. Of course, if there are military actions, war actions in Ukraine, and if there is an obligation to deliver a certain good to Ukraine where military or war actions are taking place, this may also be a ground of force majeure if the agreement has been signed prior to the actions in Ukraine. If it's now signed, I think each party must take into account that there may be war actions, and then it has to, if a contract is now signed, the relevant party must find means to overcome these difficult situations. Last but not least, some words on management liability. Managers of Russian companies are obliged to act in the interests of the company, and if a general director is not is not performing the agreements due to sanctions, this would be a basis under Russian law for management liability. I also don't want to jump over this particular situation is bankruptcy situation. If the current situation leads to a bankruptcy of a company, this may also lead to a liability of the general director, even to a liability of the shareholder. If the insolvency application is not filed in time, or if for example, if a general director leads the company into bankruptcy, this may have as a consequence the personal liability of that general director. And there are explanations of the government which say that if a general director is observing sanctions and by that is not performing obligations, and this would lead to bankruptcy, this may be treated by the Russian authorities as an intentional bankruptcy, which has the possibility, which has as a consequence the liability of that managing director. Yeah. There are, sorry, Mr. Moritz?
Yeah, Dr. Mundry, what do you think? Shall we maybe come to an end and maybe then leave some questions?
Mr. Moritz, I will do this, just 2 words. Yeah. External administration, I think, is one important thing. Russia wants to keep the businesses in, the foreign businesses in Russia, and there is a draft law which says that if foreign management is leaving a Russian company, this may lead to external administration, sequestration, and even a sale of the shares in that company to another company. And Russia is introducing a criminal liability for observing foreign sanctions. These were my last remarks, Mr. Moritz, and I'm open, of course, for any questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you, and sorry for maybe interrupting you.
Everything is fine.
Of course, there are many details in this, but especially the last thing that you said is quite curious, because if they introduce a criminal liability on following foreign sanctions, then this might lead really to interrupt also, or lead to that certain companies really would try to stop their activities as soon as possible, because otherwise they risk to go to jail. So I don't know if that is really so productive. The beginning was clear. I mean, that they will try to not to go against the companies, but now it seems so. Imprisonment up to 10 years. So I would leave the floor to or open the microphone to those who would like to have ask a question regarding, let's say, the sanctions regulation that I have presented regarding the European Union's sanction decided together, or also to the presentation that Dr. Mundry has presented now regarding the Russian counter sanctions. Of course, there are many other implications of that war, not only this, but we have also total breakdown of the Ukrainian economy, which indeed involves the problem also of agricultural production, which is very important, because the wheat from Ukraine should have been seeded now in this period, and most probably it will be seeded only very few of it. And that means also a high and harsh impact, especially on African countries. We are aware of that. But let's say we are trying to discuss today in the short time that we have available on about the sanctions from both sides, which and what the companies can do in the middle of this, sitting in between two seats, let's say. Yeah. So if there is any kind of question, you are of course free to raise your hand and to intervene. Oh, I see there is no one. Then I would like to ask Dr. Mundry if he wants to add something.
No, not really. I think that the main aspects I have raised, we are very much concerned of the situation in Russia. We very much hope that the situation soon comes to an end, and that business in Russia can continue, because in my understanding, not only is Russia dependent on supplies and technology from the European Union, on the other hand, Europe is very much dependent on oil and gas and other raw materials from Russia, and it would of course be great to find to come back to terms.
Yeah, that we also hope, but especially we hope the war ends soon, and that the dying of people and soldiers ends soon, which is absolutely a scandal in Europe. I would like to give the floor to my colleague David Sanchez, which would like to offer you also now a last introduction to the way how we can, you, the participants, the audience of this webinar, can maybe continue to exchange thanks to the SME2B platform where you have registered. Before that, let me remind you that this is the first of 6 webinars that or 7 in total, that we run on the Ukraine crisis and the SME Crisis Response. Or not the first, this is the second, because the first one was on the how to support Ukrainian companies and Ukrainian refugees. And now we have talked about the sanctions. And next week, on Wednesday 13 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we will speak about cyber attacks and how you can prepare your company against possible intrusions into your systems or computers and mobile phones. And then on April 28th, 2 weeks later, we will talk about the European energy costs and how to instantly reduce them or find alternative solutions to your energy supplies. And here also all the companies that have good ideas and technologies and solutions to offer and to share with other companies are invited to participate and to pitch their own product and service for 4 or 5 minutes. We would be happy to feature and welcome you. And then in May, we continue with the possibility to protect your intellectual property. Russia has withdrawn from all international agreements on intellectual property protection. So now it's important that you use the opportunities of the European Intellectual Property Office to protect your intellectual property. And finally, on May 12th, we will talk about the possibility to use the advantages of free trade agreements for SMEs, which we have with countries like Vietnam, Canada, Japan, and underway also, as I said before, with New Zealand and Mercosur. So please, my last words here. Thank you very much for being here. David, please continue. Your floor is yours.
No, thank you very much, Stefan. I would like to introduce you to our platform. And I would like to show you the path that you should do in order to have any connection through it. So you arrive here. I can share with you in the, sorry, I can share with you the link chat to our platform, please. So here you have it. Then when you arrive, you can log in. And I will put this, you just log in, and once you are here, you can go there, up in the menu in participants, and for example, now we can do a test. So I can show you, for example, I will make a request meeting with Stefan, and I see, for example, today 7, I don't know, now at 3, next, all right.
Maybe now at 3.
Yeah, well, whenever, right? It's just a test. So
No,
hello. It's okay, or back. Yeah, don't worry. Or we can put 7. I don't know. Whenever at 4. Hello. Whatever we wanted to say. Interesting that I'm interested in connection with you, or yeah. So, and a request. We have here the data. We press OK, and Stefan probably will have a message asking for it, right? Do you have it? Meetings?
Yeah, I have it. I accept it.
Yeah, I have a message here saying hello. Okay, perfect. So here in the menu up here, we have meetings. So we have here David, Stefan, meeting schedule. We can cancel it, we can reschedule, invite guests. For example, I want to invite, I don't know, for example, Lorenzo, and I can copy and send to another person. Or we need to change, so we can change here the hour, I don't know, to the 8 at 11 or whenever, no? But anyway, we will have this here, okay? So you can have the meetings to whoever you want it. Here also you have what all the meetings that you have accepted, pending of approval of the accepting of someone, and what was cancelled, and you can have it. Also, you can make here a camera and microphone test. Okay, so you can have the meeting here inside. So that's
maybe also the participants marketplace, a word about that. You can know the people that you can contact before.
So here also, you mean the marketplace that we have, right? Yeah. So when you have your profile, you log register on the platform. You can create your profile, and also you can search through the you can put your offer in the marketplace, no? So you can create an offer about products, services, or expertise, or you are searching for partnership or project collaboration or investment or request, no? So for example, if I'm searching for an expertise, so I can try to find anything about, I don't know, energy. So we have all the profiles here about the energy or education or the thing that I'm searching, no? Or products, concrete product. Okay, so yeah. Or in the case, for example, a partnership, okay, a joint venture, franchise, business. So yeah, and also you can request a meeting, as we were showing in the section of participants, and it works exactly the same. And also a message, and we don't want to forget that we can create a message also as in the participant. You can directly say hello, and when you have the connection, maybe you are interested to have the meeting.
Yeah, and then on the participants, you can also choose the participants following the country where they are seated. In this sense, also, if you're looking for a business partner in a certain country, you just open this search function and you choose among the already, I don't know, more than 60 different countries that we have here. And you can go then through the list and maybe also identify the areas of activities. So that means the business area, or the kind of organization they are, if they're a company, if they're an institution, and so on and so forth. It's very easy and fast search functions, and you can identify immediately your potential business partners, contact them, and arrange meetings with them. Online, one-to-one video that does not cost anything else, and you don't have to necessarily find an agreement through another platform. But anyway, thank you very much for your participation. We are 4 minutes late, like we started, more or less. And I hope to see you next week on Wednesday, 13th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon regarding the potential cyber attacks on small and medium-sized enterprises and the possibility to protect yourself from these menaces. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.